Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030 is without a doubt the most audacious national transformation plan in modern history. But today, we're doing a reality check. We're looking directly at what happens when grandiose sci-fi ambition collides head-on with pragmatic execution and, frankly, the hard limits of global economics. If you've been following the massive headlines lately, you know the narrative is shifting fast. The facts on the ground are telling a profoundly different story than those original flashy announcement videos. For over a century, right since the violent unifications that formed the Third Saudi state starting back in 1902, the kingdom has relied on oil. It's been their absolute geopolitical and economic lifeblood. But what happens when that state attempts to instantly pivot away from oil, launching a literal trillion-dollar mega-project blueprint, only to meet the hard wall of fiscal reality? For the global football fans and geopolitics watchers tuning in, this is your definitive explainer on the money, the motives, and the massive pivots reshaping the Middle East right now. Okay, let's dive into this. Vision 2030 is not just a single project or some catchy marketing slogan. It's a vast, interconnected architecture built on three very distinct pillars: a vibrant society, a thriving economy, and an ambitious nation. And listen, these aren't just empty buzzwords. They are measurable agendas cascaded into highly specific institutional key performance indicators, or KPIs. We're talking about tangible quality of life improvements, serious economic diversification driven by the Public Investment Fund, and strict government fiscal discipline. Section 1. Society and Cultural Shifts, the most undeniable successes of Vision 2030. So before we even get to the giant sci-fi cities out in the desert, we need to look at the society itself. Right now, the most undeniable, rapid, and truly tangible successes of Vision 2030 are happening on the ground, long before any of these physical megaprojects are actually finished. And this timeline brilliantly illustrates exactly what I mean. The social operating environment in Saudi Arabia has transformed at an absolute breakneck speed. Back in 2018, a crucial anti-harassment law was enacted, and the infamous ban on female drivers was finally lifted. By 2019, major travel and male guardianship reforms were passed. And the payoff for all of this? Well, as of 2026, female workforce participation has reached 33%. That is nearly doubling in just 5 years. This rapid integration of women into the workforce is a monumental shift that fundamentally alters their domestic economy. And beyond those labor reforms, the kingdom is rapidly monetizing its own history. Saudi Arabia has successfully opened 8 UNESCO World Heritage Sites to the globe. We are talking about ancient, totally breathtaking locations, like the Nabatean tombs of Hijra and the mud brick palaces of At-Taref. This isn't just about preserving history, right? It's about building a massive, new cultural tourism engine to keep domestic spending inside the country, all while attracting serious international capital. Section 2. Mega projects, promise versus reality. Reorienting the trillion-dollar blueprint. Now, what's really interesting here is the promise versus the reality, and how this entire trillion-dollar blueprint is being urgently reoriented. We have to talk about the physical mega projects, specifically NEOM, and address the massive scalebacks that are making headlines. Let's actively contrast the jaw-dropping 2021 promise for the line against the 2026 ground truth reality. The initial pitch? A 170-kilometer linear city housing 9 million people, with an estimated price tag somewhere between $500 billion and $1 trillion. The reality today? They're focusing on an initial proof-of-concept phase of just 2 kilometers, designed for 300,000 residents costing between $15 and $25 billion. The remaining 168 kilometers? Indefinitely deferred. And it absolutely doesn't stop with the line. Other massive components of the NEOM ecosystem are feeling that exact same recalibration. Oxagon, the planned floating industrial city, has seen its timeline pushed way out into the early 2030s. Trojana, the futuristic mountain resort slated to host the 2029 Asian Winter Games, it's currently materially behind schedule, and it's going to require billions in immediate construction awards just to have a shot at being ready on time. But here is an absolutely critical distinction we need to make. NEOM is not failing. It is simply reorienting around what is actually achievable. There are genuine, massive successes under active construction right now. For example, the $8.4 billion green hydrogen plant is already 80% complete. That's going to be a literal global game changer for green energy. The luxury Red Sea resort of Sindola, completely on track. And that 2-kilometer phase of the line is actively being built right now. They're delivering, just on a fiercely prioritized scale. Section 3. The Economic Balancing Act. The macroeconomic forces forcing a pivot. So the obvious question you're probably asking is why? Why this dramatic shift? Why shrink a sprawling 170-kilometer city down to just 2 kilometers? Well, to understand the stalled construction sites, we have to look at the global economic levers that are currently forcing the kingdom into a high-stakes macroeconomic balancing act. See, Saudi Arabia has historically been the swing producer of global oil. To stabilize global markets, they've led severe OPEC plus production cuts. Now, that strategy successfully stabilized prices, but it also placed a hard global ceiling around $80 per barrel. And that significantly strained the state's budget for infinite open-ended megaprojects. Add in regional conflicts restricting Gulf liquidity and the IMF projecting a modest GDP growth of just 1.7% for 2024, and the math on an unlimited budget simply breaks down. And the result of those massive macroeconomic pressures? It's this surprising drop. The Public Investment Fund, or PIF, slashed its active construction commitments from $71 billion down to roughly $30 billion. Let that sink in. That is a staggering 60% reduction in physical construction contracts.
Section 4. The Technology and FIFA Pivot, where the capital is flowing now. Let's see how this builds, because that $41 billion difference didn't just disappear into thin air. It was simply, and very urgently, reallocated. Capital is pivoting aggressively away from open-ended, futuristic cities and moving toward projects with incredibly strict, absolutely immovable international deadlines. Specifically, we're talking about the FIFA 2034 World Cup, which requires 16 new or upgraded stadium facilities and massive transit networks, alongside the Expo 2030 site in Riyadh. Now, this exact dynamic is the center of intense global debate. Some critics frame this heavy investment in global sports entirely as sportswashing, a calculated geopolitical PR strategy designed to distract from human rights records. But conversely, others argue it's a strictly pragmatic business move, a guaranteed catalyst to force rapid infrastructure development, drive immediate tourism revenue, and cement global economic integration. Regardless of where you stand on that debate, the financial reality remains absolute. These hard deadlines demand immediate capital, forcing NEOM's open-ended timelines right to the back of the line.
So the crucial point here is that we are witnessing a massive sector rotation. Traditional U.S. and Western physical construction firms are losing out on anticipated revenue, while high-margin tech companies are rushing in to fill the void. A perfect example of this is the Swedish-American tech firm Hexagon, which just recently secured a massive $2.7 billion contract for smart city data infrastructure. The priorities have definitively shifted away from pouring concrete toward laying fiber optics, building AI data centers, and getting prepped for the World Cup. Which leaves us with this final, genuinely provocative thought to consider. Will this forced pivot, moving away from flashy sci-fi megaprojects and toward highly practical AI infrastructure, World Cup tourism, and functional green energy, actually become the true success story of Vision 2030? Has fiscal reality essentially saved Saudi Arabia's transformation from its own unchecked ambition? For all the global football fans and geopolitics watchers tuning in today, I really want to hear your take on this intense balance of sports, business, and raw economics. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going.